3 and 5 are present. If you would, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 4. Item number 4 is citizen comment period. I have one person that signed up. Remember, we need your name and address. Doesn't count for your time. And the only person on here is Mr. Ken Kniper. And remember, our podium is the second podium. So while he's proceeding over there, I'll just remind everybody that obviously this is because of COVID, the way we're all separated. We've got social distance. When we're done with that mic, if anybody else speaks, we'll make sure it's cleaned off before you use it. If you are coming up to speak, just be mindful of the distance as you walk up to the podium. It's pretty easy, and we laid it out to make sure that you could do that. So, the floor is yours.
Ken Kniper, 8891 Shanetal Road. The reason I'm speaking tonight is about Davenport High School. If you haven't been on their Facebook page, one of our residents that lives in Garden Ridge will have a short commute to work. He will not be driving all the way to Clark High School. It's Joseph Magua. I'm probably not pronouncing his last name right. He does live here, and he will be the assistant principal. And the high school has hired a new hire, and that person will be in charge of UIL. She's a UIL coach along with being in charge of fine arts at the high school. Her resume is impressive. She's had winning first act plays, people in debate, which she'll also coach those, and other speakers and other areas of UIL that she does that is not athletics. So I think we have gotten a lot of support from Comal ISD. And I want to commend the chief and the PD, because a lot of what they have done with Coffee with a Cop, when COVID is hopefully over and we can get back to the bank and we can have some coffee with a cop, and also pizza with the police, where our citizens can interact, except for other actions that are maybe they are calling them that they need help, or traffic stops. Those are two ways to meet the police department. And the other one is their support of National Night Out, where all of our officers are there and the community can see how they interact with the children and the adults in our community. So we have gotten great support out of our PD, and they have done an outstanding job. And Chief, thank you to them, and let them know that we appreciate their service to our country and to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's the only person that we have signed up. That concludes item number 4. Moving on to item number 5, consent agenda. For the consent agenda, we have 3 items that were in your package. Do I have anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, and if nobody wants to pull anything, can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have place 5 with a motion to approve as presented. Can I get a second?
Second.
We'll go with place 3 for the second. Did he? Oh, well, we'll go with place 1 then. Place 1 because he had his mic on, and we gotta encourage that behavior. So I got a motion for place 5, second for place 1. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor of approval as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Moving on to item number 6, staff reports. So council, and these staff reports, just like we did last time, I've asked all of our department heads to not only speak to what they've reported to you, the standard and answer any questions you have, but also to address continuity of operations, including actions and operations under under the constraints of COVID and what they're doing, if they need anything, and how their folks are doing and all that. So pretty much the way we ran it last time, we're doing it again this time. So I'd like to hand this over first to our city administrator. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. The item I would like to add to my report is that I am working on a budget and tax rate calendar for the 2021 budget and the 2020 tax rate. I hope to have that out to you no later than the beginning of next week. So you can look at that calendar and let us know your availability on those dates. Also, as Mayor said, the department heads are going to report on their work with continuity of operations as it relates to COVID-19. And I would like to call on our finance HR, Karen Ford, for her report.
Let me intervene real quick and just say,
Yes.
Council, do you have any questions for the city administrator part of the report before we move away from that? Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Kat's going to put it on the board. So anyway, this is the same report that I gave you last month. I just did some updating to it, so it's current as of the last council meeting. We've had an increase in the funds that have been spent for COVID, a total of almost $3,200. If you look at the top half of this sheet, I'm just going to go over really quickly where the changes are. The park rental went up another $200. That's lost rental income. The late fees for garbage for this month was $261. The water was $562. So the total revenue was $1,023. That was the difference between last month and this month. And then if you go down to the expenditures, under the public safety COVID-19 expenditures, these are expenditures that we hope to claim with FEMA. That went up $1,529. Then if you go down to the non-COVID expenses, these are expenses that we wouldn't normally make, but we had to do these, but they're not claimable with FEMA. And that is just the miscellaneous expenditures went up $25, and that was for online training. The next line, which is the EE hours due to public health and safety task, this is a new line this month. We will see this one go up in the next couple of months. This is where we will be putting the hours that we can claim back to FEMA for tasks that are directly related to public health and safety, such as spraying down the playground equipment. When we had the testing up at the community center, we had a police officer up there and a public works person also. And so that brings the total COVID expenditures, whether they're claimable or not, they went up $2,158. So overall, again, from last month to this month, it went up $3,181. The next two lines, the loss for the work hours is exactly the same, no change. And the sales tax, I don't have June, it's too early in the month, so I won't be able to tell you how we compare to last year until the next council meeting. So, any questions?
Comments, questions for Ms. Ford? Left side? Right side? Thank you. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask our city secretary, Marissa Spencer, to provide her report to council.
Thank you. So within the admin department, everything's going well. My people are all doing great. If you don't know this already, our lobby is now open from 9 to 12, and obviously we are available by appointments anytime between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. You probably saw when you came in, if you came through the lobby, there's markers on the ground for social distancing, there's hand sanitizing stations, so we've taken all the precautions that the CDC's advised. And then, as I talked about last time, we're still working on being able to have our video conferencing in the council room. I'm going to have a demo of a system, hopefully this Friday. It's an all-in-one system, so should meet all of our needs for the conference room. And then we're working on what we can do in here to be able to have either, if need be, a full remote meeting, or say, for instance, tonight, our 2 people that aren't able to be here, if we could get them connected into the meeting pretty seamlessly, and what kind of equipment that entails. So we're working on that currently. That's all I have to update at this time.
Great, thank you. Starting right side, questions, comments for admin? Left side.
And one quick question, if we had some of the council that was participating remotely, would they be able to vote on something we have that comes up here? Mayor, or-
Well, she's looking at the attorney. That's a temporary thing. Right now, because of COVID, the Attorney General has enabled that to happen, but under normal circumstances, it's not supposed to happen. So, but that said, we're looking at what you heard Ms. Spencer talk about, not just for council meetings, for other types of meetings, other kinds of business, particularly in the back room, in the executive council room, where we can conduct business meetings, that kind of thing, and be able to do them and tie other people into it. But no, the council, when it goes back to normal and the ruling from the Attorney General is dissolved, then it's going to be back to what we're doing. And actually, I want to add something to that. It also would give us the opportunity or the ability that if we wanted somebody to speak to y'all and they couldn't be here, maybe it's an expert on whatever, Oakland or whatever, they could actually tie into the system as well. And we would be able to have them on a conference, everybody would be able to see it, be public, but yet they wouldn't necessarily have to be there. And you would have, you, the council, would have the benefit of getting that information firsthand from that person. Any, do you have anything? Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Ma'am, anything else? No, sir. Okay, moving on to item 6B, Police Department. Chief. Oh, good timing, sorry.
Good timing, sorry. Unlocking the door. Thank you. I don't really have anything to add to the report that was submitted regarding the stats. To add about all of our COVID efforts, we are still staggering shifts so that we're not overlapping personnel within the department at any given time to keep that out on the road. The officers are still out on the road. We are still covering all the calls, not having any issues. And I wanted to let y'all know our local emergency services coordinator, Jeff Kelly, has been doing a fantastic job of keeping us supplied with PPE for the police department. I actually met with him again today and restocked some KN95 masks and some gloves and all that for officers. So that helps take a lot of the stress out of what we're doing, since things are still hard to get out on the market for that. So he's taking pretty good care of us. So just wanted y'all to know that. Other than that, everything's running as smoothly as can be right now. Does anybody have any questions?
Right side, questions for the chief? Mike?
Just a comment. I noticed your comment about high morale while society chastises police officers across the nation. Sometimes it takes something like this to realize how fortunate we are to live in this city with some real good police officers. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything over here, sir? Ma'am?
I concur with what Mr. McCaw said.
Thank you. And yeah, I would too. I do too. Not would, I do. I do too. And I'll go further with that and say that last month talked about how your officers have been doing a great job in the face of COVID and all the challenges of that in a dynamic and often completely unknown environment from the health perspective. But yeah, we certainly appreciate the leadership all the way through the department and the professionalism of the department. And please pass on to all your officers that everybody up on council has said that to you tonight.
Will do. Thank you.
Next up is Public Works.
Good evening. This month, Public Works Department installed some reflective markers on Bat Cave Road so that drivers at night can see the curve when they're coming off of FM 2252, because that curve is not very lit up and we didn't want anybody driving off that curve over there by the FM 2252 water plant. We are continuing painting City Hall. We have 2 dogs. It might be, yeah, that's Tramp up there. He's about a 2-year-old terrier mix. He's ready for adoption. What else we got? And for the COVID, we are now sanitizing playground equipment daily. So if anybody plays on it, we do have some protection on that end of the Paul Davis and Pocket Parks. That's all I have. Oh, wait, we did have an incident where somebody was dumping trash at where we have our dumpsters at by our Public Works building on, I think it was Tuesday. So we are having some issues with some people dumping on days that they're not assigned for the dumpsters.
Comments, questions for Public Works?
Yes, sir. Do you mean this is becoming a pattern, or just happened a couple times, or
It just happened this last week. Started last Thursday.
Thursday and Friday or whatever?
Yes.
We don't have cameras?
We have a camera, but it's not a high definition camera. We can make out the make of a vehicle and the blurriness of the people moving around, but nothing really good though.
I wonder if there's a way to chain that off, and if they drive through it, so be it.
Well, okay, I was going to wait till afterwards, but I'm going to jump in here. There's a couple of different things. First of all, to go last first, you asked about the cameras. We're Public Works and PD are working on that, and we're gonna fix that issue. We're not gonna have that issue anymore. So we will be able to provide law enforcement with adequate information to be able to go after anybody that goes up there and dumps anything. So to be clear, there were 3 different incidents of dumping. One was on a Thursday night, which is very clearly has nothing to do with confusion of when the dumpsters are supposed to be available. And it was somebody that that obviously went up there and thought they'd just get away with dumping a mattress. And then the other incidences actually happened on the weekend because people forgot that it was the first 4 weekends, not all the weekends of May. And so a couple of people apparently went up there and were disappointed enough that they couldn't dump that they decided they were going to dump. Anyway, one dumped inside the fence, one dumped outside the fence. But chaining it off, we would have to chain off Municipal Parkway basically, because they could dump anywhere along there if they wanted to. But instead, we're gonna make sure that we have better information when somebody does something like that, because it's illegal. It's illegal dumping, and we don't want to have to deal with what somebody dumps. There's no telling what somebody might go up there and dump. So we're working on it.
Thank you.
Good questions. Sir, do you have any? A couple of things just want to point out. You know, they're called turtles. Now, Public Works taught me that. I didn't know that. But those little reflectors, they call them turtles. And I really appreciate that because that's something that we brought to TxDOT and the county a long time ago. And they've remained silent on it. So our Public Works took the matter into their own hands and they worked the problem. And I I really appreciate that. Every time I've driven there at night, I've realized that it is an issue. And if it was bad weather and you know, obviously dark, it's very difficult to tell when you turn, and what he's talking about if you don't know, council. You're proceeding on 2252 to turn left onto Batcave, and as you make that left turn, there's no lights to light up Batcave, there's no lights to light up the definition of the road of where Batcave starts and, you know, where 2252 crosses it. And so it's kind of and it is a little bit of a cliff, so it was a hazard, it was a problem, and they've worked to remedy that, and I really appreciate the initiative there. The other thing is just publicly want to thank Public Works, because it's a bit of a thankless job, particularly as it drags on for months, and that is the sanitization, the cleaning of City Hall and the facilities, and now back out at the parks with the equipment, and it's pretty routine, can get pretty mundane, but yet it's really important, and please pass on to the folks in Public Works that we really do appreciate that they're maintaining the vigilance in that regard. Thank you. All right, next up we have water.
Thank you. So I don't have much to add to my report. Just we're using Edwards Water and we're looking good. We're on track there. And as far as the COVID, our guys are continuing with the staggered work schedule, and they are able to we're able to keep all the work that we have. We're getting it all done, and we're also in good spirits. So that's one of those things that over time it weighs on you, but we're still in very good spirits. And I'll answer any questions that you guys may have.
Questions, comments, Lisette?
Yes, please. I'm sorry I ask this probably every month, but why are we using more Edwards than Trinity?
We have Edwards Water that we have already paid for, and so we want to make sure that we
Use that up first?
use that water, correct?
Okay. And this is a rollback from when, that we own it? When, I mean, not a rollback, but on account, so to speak, from when, what time period?
It's from January to January, so it's 1 calendar year, and we pay for the water, and then we have 1 year to use it. And if we don't use it, we have already paid for it.
Sure.
And then the next year rolls, and we start over.
We adjust it according to whatever.
Yes,
Right.
if we have the same acre footage, then we continue to maintain that, correct? If we bought more water rights, then we would increase it, obviously. But and then we would pay that every single year.
Okay, and I have an additional question on the unaccountable unsold percentages. I note that April and May, although they dropped from the 11 point something, they're still higher than they were, say, a year ago. Do you have any knowledge of why? Because, for example, July of last year was only anyway, it's higher than, doesn't seem to be going down a lot, and I don't understand.
This is a question that has been circulating. We're working to be able to give a lot better explanations of what's going on. Historically past, we had an equation to figure out water loss that was a little inaccurate. So we've been able to get a better, more accurate water loss. But we want to fine and hone that, and that's what we're going to try to be doing over this next month. Is we're going to try to hone that to be even more accurate, because we have, for instance, we have 1-inch meters. And at low flow, they don't accurately read, so water goes through them, and is water that the customers are getting essentially for free, right? They're not having to pay for that water, and so that's part of where water loss comes from. There's other areas where there's seeps in the lines, and we, for being a small city, we have a lot of water lines per connection, and having those types of things, it's more water line per connection, which means that you're going to have potential more areas that would seep. And if they don't surface, we don't necessarily have ways of of good ways of finding them yet. There are technologies that are coming out and making that better, but that's one thing that we're working towards. And there's a couple other things that we're working on and to try to get that a more accurate number.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So, ma'am, the first question you asked, think of it that you rent a car and you pay for a tank of gas. You don't want to return it with any gas.
No, I understand that. I
And
understand that. I was
that's
just-
basically what's going on.
I understand that. I was just getting clarification. He clarified it for me because I know that Edwards Water per se is more expensive than Trinity. But, so that was my question, why are we using it? And again, I apologize. Maybe I asked that before. I don't think I asked that specific question, but that clarifies it. We'll determine based on our usage and how hideous this summer is and so on as to whether or not we need to renew like or less contract. Thank you.
Is there any questions?
This does happen every year, for your information.
What does?
We utilize the Edwards so we don't have to return it to them during the year. So.
I understand. I was just asking for
Okay.
a more recent clarification. Thank you.
Has anything been published or rumors or whatever about the Trinity being under an aquifer authority like Edwards where you are restricted by your past use? And the reason why I asked that is because 25 years ago, before I was on council, 25 years ago, the mayor back then decided that it would be best if we preserved or did a lot of conserving of water. A Senate bill came out establishing the Edwards. Well, what happened was, because of that, our water consumption went down. And when the Edwards came through and said, okay, we're going to restrict you based on your past usage, our past usage was well below what it had been 3 years or 4 years before. So I know what we're doing, but that you really need to keep your ear to the ground to see if we could be hurting ourselves if we are restricted by our past usage.
And I'll address that. We're very aware of that. The problem is that absent, intel or crystal ball, the undeniable fact is that we need to use what we paid for before we use what we're paying for as we use it. So our approach is maintain that, and we are. I mean, a good way to put it is what you said, keeping our ear to the ground. But spending more money and using that water in the hope that they're going to use a historical amount to determine what the allocations are would be, if it didn't happen or it didn't happen for a long time, it would be a tremendous waste of money. So.
It's a crapshoot.
Yeah. Anything else for water? Okay. Next up, library.
Are we still hot? Yes. Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me? Just to say, I know that you're probably aware that we have been open to the public since May 18th from 10 to 4. People can come in and I'm still waiting for you, Councilman McCall, to come and see us. It's been a little slow. Oh, you didn't knock on my window. I'm so sorry. Thank you. It is slow. It's like the old days when people would come in and go, I didn't know we had a library here. But I think there's still people who don't know we're open, but they're also out of the habit of coming. And some are still nervous about coming. We have about 5 families who only want books to go outside. But we have the COVID cleaning protocols in place. We're really strict on how we clean the books and just keep everything as spiffy as we can. because we feel so strongly, of course, being librarians, about summer reading for the kiddos, we're going to do a lot of tap dancing to get our summer reading program in place. Because it's well documented that kids who don't read much in the summer suffer summer slide. They lose a lot of the advantages they had during the previous year. They lose the advances that they had made. Okay, we're about to embark on the longest summer vacation in American history, 5 months before they go back to school. Every year, teachers spend about 6 weeks reteaching what I'm sorry, now I've touched it.
Hello, it's on.
Maybe it's not, is it on? Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe I shouldn't be telling you this. Teachers spend about 6 weeks every year reteaching what they've lost during the summer. So can you imagine how many weeks behind they're going to be reteaching what they've lost in the 5 months since they've been out of school? And I know, yes, they've had online classes in Comal ISD, but they only have 2 hours a week of reading, 2 hours a week of math, of science, and social studies. 2 hours a week. And it's are you there? Okay, you pass. And there's not a lot of reading required. So it's urgent that parents do everything they can to help their children read and keep up those skills. It's vital. We urge children to read 20 minutes every day. Parents need to explore different types of reading materials, help them enjoy audiobooks because listening is kind of a lost skill. Right now we have a wonderful display called Overlooked and Underrated Books, and it's full of children's math books. They're a lot of fun and easy to do. So parents need to be reviewing those with their kiddos. They need to encourage discussions, meaningful discussions with their children that improves their vocabulary, and talk about what they're reading. So for all of these reasons, we are going to have a kickoff on June 12th. I said 10:30 on the report, but it's going to be 10 o'clock because it will be outdoors and it's going to be kind of warm. So I couldn't start at 6 a.m. very well, so 10 is about as early as we can start. There will be outdoor stations that children can go to. They will end up in the community center where they can see how to get onto there's an app that they can all download and they can put in their books and their time and so forth. It's really a great tool that we hope to use all year long. So, are there any questions on what we're doing?
Right side, questions, comments for library? Sir, ma'am.
It may be too old school, but would it be worth creating a banner and putting it out by the road and say, you know, Garden Ridge Library open or something like that?
That probably would be good.
Not, I mean, beyond just, you know, obviously your online.
Right, and of course, the 2252 sign has had it several days, but not everybody sees it, it is true. That's a good idea, that's great.
Okay, thanks.
Good point. Talk it up as much as you can, everybody talk it up. So Ms. Crossland talked about some of the programs, And your question's a great question, your comment's a great comment, because I planned, and I want to encourage everybody that is watching, listening, hearing, sitting here, whatever, to spread the word about this, because this is part of us getting back what we lost over the last few months with COVID. Starting to bring some people back into activities, into learning and getting involved, and realizing that we still have a community here that will support those kinds of things. So it's great that, and I'm very, very appreciative that the library is doing these things to make sure that we start moving in that direction. So, Ms. Crossan, thank you very much, and everybody
Thank you,
please
Mayor.
spread that word. Next up is item 7, City Engineer. Welcome, Mr. Lackey.
Good evening, Mayor. Sorry for my tardiness. We're continuing to work with TxDOT on the 2252 project, gather information, working with them, coordinating potholing, basically locating utilities in the right of way that are adjacent to the proposed roadway construction. Sorry. So, repeat, we're coordinating with TxDOT on the pothole work to locate utility depths in and around the roadway construction, checking depths, and beginning to work on cost estimate for what the potential work could be for utility relocations, basically using a matrix where here's all the costs, but then what's the probability that we will have to move them or pay for them, as opposed to that their location is adequate for the proposed construction and they won't have to be relocated, to give you a better cost as you approach your budget cycle and being able to estimate for that. So that work's continuing. No change in schedule that I'm aware of that been announced. So we should have a better report by the next meeting on that. On the 22...
Sir, before you go on to the next one,
Pardon?
before you go on to the next item,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to interrupt and ask you to explain that, tell people that you're not looking for places to put potholes. Explain to people that may not know what potholing actually is.
Okay. Potholing is a technical engineering term to basically, we're going to excavate the pipeline in the vicinity of the roadway to determine, not in the roadway surface, but adjacent on the shoulders, to locate the depth from the ground to the top of the pipe, so we can determine that location into the TxDOT's proposed cross sections for those roadway areas to determine if we'll have sufficient cover or whether there needs to be protective measures such as encasement of the pipe to protect it in place. So the pothole, yes, is on the shoulders, not in the roadway surface. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Second item is 2252 wastewater project. Again, we continue to work through that. Our plans are approaching bid status, and we're looking forward to moving through with that. Continuing to contact property owners, interested landowners, developers, and work through that. We did receive approvals from TxDOT, some of the approvals on TxDOT and also the railroad area. So we're continuing to work through that and also adjusting rates and tariffs so we can bring you a complete package on that. Work continues. Any questions?
Comments for the engineer, starting right side? Sir, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to item number 8, City Commission Committee Reports, Recommendations, Possible Actions. Item 8A, Planning and Zoning, no meetings, but Dr. Miller is here. no meeting since the last time we've met, but Dr. Miller has had some activity, and sir, the floor is yours.
As the mayor said, there was no meeting in May. Last month, we provided you a synopsis of the last meeting that the Planning and Zoning Commission had, which was in March. At that time, our plan was to clean up the revised zoning ordinance with generous input from the city secretary, from the city administrator and the city attorney. We've accomplished that. The technical review subcommittee, if you will, of planning and zoning got through approximately 3/4 of the finished document, if you will, or semi-finished document, okay? We got through about 3/4 of it. I think page 101 is 180-something pages. So we still got some work to do. We're trying to get back to the normal document that it was submitted and ready probably back in January before we went off on this wild goose chase for an incentive program that we've decided, well, pretty much everybody decided wasn't good for Garden Ridge. We didn't want to be the guinea pigs. So we got it back to the original document, probably from January, I think it was. We had to remove all the wording that we had changed, and quite a few of the charts in that document had been changed because we were trying for this incentive effect, if you would. We accomplished all that. We revisited all the charts, and we went through it with a fine-tooth comb, got pretty far along. We got a little bit more to go. So in summation, the ordinance is clean up as far as we got. We will finish it sometime in the near future. I'm not sure, we don't have a set date. And then we'll pass it on or figure out with the strategic committee how to present it to city council. But we're getting real close. Questions?
Starting left side, questions, comments for Planning and Zoning Commissioner? Sir? Well done, we really appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
In spite of not having a meeting, you're still getting some stuff done, and we appreciate it. Next is item 8B, Quarry. Quarry did not have a meeting since last time, planned not to have a meeting. It wasn't, it's just their schedule. And so Chairman Holly is not attending tonight. Moving on to item 8C, Water Commission. They had one meeting, and Chairman Valdez is here to offer up some updates as well as some recommendations for some actions that y'all need to take.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. We had a very long meeting last week. It was 4 hours long, but we had make up 4 months worth of meetings, so I really only averaged an hour a meeting a month. So some commissioners were pretty tired. Anyway, we have 2 items that I have to bring forward to you with recommendations and looking for a take action for City Council. I sent you in the packet is a write-up, what I'm going to go over, so I hope you've had a chance to preview it. The first one is a request for water leak adjustment at 8150 Garden Ridge North for the bill period of December 20th, 2019 to January 21st, 2020. A plumber found a water leak in the incoming water line next to the house at a 3/4-inch PVC coupling. It was in the flower bed behind a sago palm, and I believe the roots from the sago palm might have cracked the PVC pipe. The water department questioned the resident as to why or how and why the leak had not been noticed. The homeowner replied that he thinks there was possibly a leak, it leaked into a cave and then at the surface. There was also a border, landscaping timbers in front of it that may have kept it from going to the yard. Per the laptop readings, the water department determined a 98,000 gallon leak over 2 billing periods, of which 93,000 gallons were for the period of December 20th through January 21st billing period. The 6,000 gallons for the billing period of January 21st through February 20th were less than the billing period for that period was less than 15,000 gallons, so that part did not warrant any credit. The Water Commission recommends the water manager proposal to credit the homeowner $1,022.84 for approval by city council. Again, the calculation is up there above. You can see how we did it. The water bill portion of that bill was 102,000 gallons, which was $14.92. This resident is outside the city limits, I believe, right? Yeah. And so it's a higher rate. And then the leak of 93,000 gallons was worth $411,000. That's the credit, or that's how much the homeowner needs to pay at that rate. And then the regular water that they consume was $58.92. And subtract those, that leaves $1,022.84. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or in action.
Thank you, sir. First of all, thank you for sending these ahead of time. Council, these can get pretty involved, and the commission looked at 6, I believe. I was there, but I lost track. I felt almost
6.
long, it got long. But and so these are pretty involved. That's why you got them ahead of time. Now, I never would want you to look at this stuff for the first time and under the gun of a 1-minute decision. That's why we're going to always try to get these to you ahead of time. Also, the background of this, the backstory is the ordinance and how these calculations are done and how these decisions are made and what flows to you versus what goes to city administrator, what goes and stops with city administrator, what stops with the water manager. And all that is something that you would know and be able to answer questions about, and 6 months later, you might not be able to answer those same questions. So I'm saying all that to say, please, when you get these, never hesitate to call and talk to the water manager or talk to our Water Commission chair and make sure you understand this so you don't feel like we're going, hey, come on, make a decision now, and it's the first time you've seen this. So these, we are working towards having fewer and fewer of these, but nevertheless, when they do come to you, if the screen went blank and I said, okay, explain how we did this, you'd be hard pressed. So they are a little bit involved. It's not complex necessarily, but it is pretty involved. So that said, if you have any questions for the water manager or the Water Commission chair, please let's do that now and then see if this is the way you want to move. But this is one that rose to the level of your approval as council. So starting on the right side, questions or comments for either one of those two? Sir?
What was the total of the bill before the credit was given?
There it is. So it shows up on the screen there. There's 102,000 gallons. The water portion of that bill was $1,492.83. Again, this is outside city limit rates, so it's a lot higher than city rates. So their portion
So
of the
we're
bill,
crediting them back $1,022 out of $1,400.
so they're still paying essentially $460. And $411 of that is for the water that was leaked, is at the lower tier rate.
And that's an important distinction. That water that leaks out isn't free. They're paying for it. They're just paying for it at the low rate. We're not.
I understand. No,
penalizing.
I've come to grips with that, and I'm gonna rely on y'all's expertise in the future for these recommendations. But using that much water and giving them and only paying $400 it still boggles my mind.
Understand.
And I hear you, I really do. But keep in mind that there were a lot of wickets they had to go through to prove that they really did have a problem, that really it was fixed. There's a lot of investigation, a lot of time. In fact, probably too much time that both the water manager and the Water Commission chair spend on these. So it's not taken lightly by any stretch.
No, I kind of concur, I use that already, don't want to use that word. I agree with Mr. Lancy. It's still, everybody has mistakes and so on like that. I guess the fact that they are being assessed some process, I do agree with charging a lesser rate, because I don't believe it was intentional or careless necessarily, but I only do that, I only approve it or support it in the sense that I do respect what the water manager and what Mr. Valdez are doing, because otherwise I think we'd be, I do see a lessening of requests, at least getting to us. So I thank you for that.
I guess we can look at it positively, they're recharging the aquifer.
We don't want to look at that one. Any other questions or comments on this item? This, again, is item number 1. Sorry, you have some. Okay, so this is request for water leak for 8150 Ridge North, and you have the recommendation. So if there are no other questions, entertain a motion.
I move to accept the Water Commission's recommendations for the water leak adjustment at 8150 North Ridge, or Ridge North, I'm sorry.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the recommendation from the Water Commission from place 3. Can I get a second?
Second.
Place 1 with a second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is unanimous. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, the second request is for 2525 FM 3009. This is for past due penalties. So for the billing period of October 16th, 2019 to November 27th, 2019. Dr. Owen submitted a leak adjustment request on September 26th of 2019. In communication with the utility clerk, it was suggested that she remove her account from AutoDraft. She sent an email that same day to the utility clerk to remove her account until her leak adjustment request could be reviewed. On October 1st, she received a water bill for the $4,022.92, which did not get paid. So on October 16th, she was assessed a late charge of $404.88. Again, she did not pay her November 1st bill, and she was assessed an additional $450.64. At that point, she did contact the office again and did make arrangements for payment. Apparently, she was not aware that when she stopped the auto draft payment, she needed to make arrangements to make payments to get exempt from the late fees. So it was a miscommunication between the city offices and her. And we had just started the process for looking at leak adjustments. So no leak adjustments were reviewed on October 22nd meeting. The Water Commission started reviewing the leak adjustments request at the November 19th meeting, but the Water Department had not completed her evaluation of her request until November 26th, which was after the meeting. Actually, she didn't get all her all her documentation until early November, so that was the reason it was held up. And it was in the December schedule meeting, but that meeting was canceled, so we didn't meet until January on this item. And I presented it to City Council at the February 5th meeting, where City Council approved a credit for $3,452.38. So we looked at different options. The water manager looked at different options and maybe reviewed to look at what we could do to credit on this late fees. One option was to give her credit for the full late fees of $855.82. Another one, option 2, was to credit based on the leak adjustment. So we looked at that the homeowner actually spent $570.54 in the, due to the leak. So we adjusted it based on that. So it was $57.05 for October. And then so I have the 570, you see the equation, but another $68. So that gives another credit of $730.15. I don't know if I can go through all the details there. The second option was just based on the water she actually used, which is $56.94, not the leak. And that credit comes out to $838. Now, we'll note that the water manager did not include the additional fee for November, which is the $55.58 that's in the middle there. So that's why this number is different from the Water Commission meeting. So the Water Commission actually recommended to use the water manager's option 2, and per the recommendation, it was $735.71. Again, there's an additional fee up there that brings it down to 730. So that's why the difference there. Hope that makes sense. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for questions. Very confusing, I know, but.
So again, this is pretty involved. It's not complicated. All of you are more than capable of understanding it, but if you're trying to figure it out all, under the light, so to speak, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So that's why we sent this to you ahead of time. Again, please never hesitate to contact us, the water manager, the city manager, the city administrator, the water manager, or the water commission chair, if you have any questions about any of these, because obviously we're sending it to you because it's going to show up here in council for a decision. So again, to review, the recommendation is from the water commission was 735.71, but with the realization that the number was, that one number wasn't put in there, the credit gets lowered to 730.15, which is what you see up there in the middle of the page. So questions, comments for again, either the water manager or the water commission chair. Start on the left side.
Okay, let's get a two-line summary or something. You guys do or do not agree that the leak was treated properly or that it really was legitimate? I mean, you agree that it was?
We do agree that the leak was treated properly. She actually, the leak occurred so far from her driveway. She's got 5 acres right off 309.
Mm-hmm.
So her driveway is real far from where the water comes in. The leak happened right along the fence line, and it was hard to see.
Right.
But when she noticed it was when she had the water pressure when she was in the morning, okay? And she called the water department immediately to help. Water was cut off. Her brother came in later that day and fixed the leak, and everything's gone away. So we do agree that was solved. But again, she solved it before they actually got the water bill. Because I said it was on 26, she didn't get the bill for another 4 days.
Right.
So yes, we agree on that. And that's why the 4 options are there. I mean, one thing is you can say that there's some miscommunication she needed to ask for making payments. That way she wouldn't have got the charges to begin with, versus the other options there. So the Water Commission talked about different things and different, how we're doing it. That's why they proposed it, but yes. So, I mean, you could pick any other one options there.
So keep in mind, this isn't a leak adjustment.
Right.
This is an adjustment to the bill,
So this is-
late fees.
Right.
Because of the
Yeah.
dispute. Now, and actually, one thing that I want to add to this that unfortunately is pertinent is that we had a scene in staff. So the person that was dealing with this is no longer here.
Yes.
That makes it a little bit more difficult to do the forensics on it.
Right. That is correct.
Ma'am, do you have anything else?
No, just, no.
Okay. Looks like she did, sorry, go ahead.
I'm as confused as she is. Was there any penalties assessed for her late payments at all?
Just those 2. After that, she didn't get credit to her account until, I guess, February 6th, when she actually got the credit from the leak adjustment. So no fees, additional fees, but she did make a payment, I believe, in between there to start what she thought, part of the bill was going to be. It's there's a record there where it has all the fees, all the payments and fees that were added to her account. Should be in your packet, I believe, right? There it is.
Jesse, this confuses me about as much as your conversation did.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
I don't know what you
I use CAT
expect
to
us to
explain to
make
me.
out of this. What was the total charges for her late payments?
$855.
What did she pay?
Right now, she's got a credit right now on her account. So
You're
she's
going to
right
charge
now.
her nothing for her late payments, even though
Now,
she...
I'm going to jump in because this is confusing. But the reason she has the credit is because of the leak adjustment.
Right.
So think about it, it's on her account as a credit. It's not, the credit on her account for the leak adjustment is just a coincidence with what we're talking about. So she's not going to pay more because she's sitting there with a big credit, because she paid, and then we gave her a leak adjustment, which gave her a credit.
Right there, she has payments of, what, $902 that she actually paid?
That is
Yeah.
aside, so that's aside from, when we talk about the credit and all this other stuff, it's really just talking about her account. We could have just set the account thing aside and said, we're just, what we're talking about right now is she owes this much money, and we're looking at changing it to that much money is what their recommendation is.
Okay, well, let's talk about our account only. You're wiping her clean as far as any penalties for late payments,
Well, option two.
even though there may have only been one circumstance about that.
Well, actually, the option two actually still charges her some late payments. She don't get credit for the full amount. Option two doesn't. Option two still charges her about $125 of late fees.
Sir?
Well, in looking at this, my biggest comment was, she's used a lot of water. She's used water, period, whether she's washing her hands or whatever. And she didn't pay anything for a couple months, and I thought, that just doesn't seem right. But at least you've included the penalty for the months that she didn't do anything. So I would move that we give her a credit based on number 2 for $730.15.
Okay, so that is a motion. So I have 730, did you say?
730.
730 and 15 cents from
Yes.
place one. Can I get a second?
Second.
And from place three, I have a second. And in the discussion, any other further discussion or questions?
Sorry, yes, I need to clarify. So we're saying that there would be no penalties assessed? I mean, there is a reduced penalty.
Right.
But instead of 800 and some, the 5705 is a percentage and so on, plus the less 6831. So she's getting credit for her penalties. I understand that the league adjustment is separate.
Right.
So this sounds like she's not being assessed any penalties.
Well, she's still being assessed the difference between the 855 and the 730.
That's $100 and some dollars.
Yeah, that's
Out of
the,
800 and some.
huh?
Out of 800 and some, and it's not
Right.
all our fault. I mean, there is a responsibility on the part of the citizen.
So
Comply.
let me take this. The problem is since we don't have that staff member, we can't attest to what she was told when she said, I have a bill that is basically, in protest. And so her side of the story is that I didn't pay anything because I was waiting for you all to tell me what I needed to pay. There was also a delay in there because of the cancellation of a meeting, and so it got delayed farther. So her side of the story is, I'm waiting for you to tell me what to pay. And our side of the story is, we don't have much of a side because that person isn't here. So it leaves us kind of holding the bag. And that's why we said, well, there's a part of this that it's very obvious you needed to pay. The other part would be, all three of you here would probably say, well, look, I understand. I know I got to pay something. But that's not something that we can guarantee was told to her. So
Yeah.
that's why, and they spent a lot of time on this in the Water Commission.
Yeah.
And that's why when they came up with this, they said, look, this part here, we know she knew, and she needs to pay this penalty. The other part of it is up for debate, and because it's up for debate, they weren't comfortable with it, and that's why they recommended what they recommended.
She did come forward after the February city council meeting and told me about the late charges. And her words is she would have paid the bill all entirely and got the credit later, if she had known about it, so. But that's her words. And we don't know like I said, we don't know what the utility clerk at that time told her. So all they told her was that she could stop the auto draft, but not realizing the result of that.
So it's an unfortunate situation and not a situation anybody's comfortable with, but the Water Commission's recommendation is based on they didn't see any other way to recommend it. Any other comments or questions? I have a motion from place 1 and a second from place 3. That's right, yeah. Motion from place 1, place 3 for $730.15. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. So place 1 and 3 are yes. Place 5 is no. The motion passes. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Continuing, as you said, Mr. Mayor, we did have 5 other leak adjustments to discuss. 3 other requests, the Water Commission recommended the city administrator to credit the accounts because these were all less than $500 each, so we were able to do that. The 4th request, the Water Commission recommended the city administrator to deny. The request was based, or they actually had the request for the entire year of 2019. The last 2 months that we had actually water usage was below 15,000 gallons, so neither one of those bills, even if they did have a leak, they weren't eligible for any credit, just because they're at the low rate already. So anyway, that was a recommendation to deny that one. The 5th request, the Water Commission asked the water manager to go back to the resident and request evidence that the plan to mitigate the cause has been completed before we're willing to give any credit back. So we want to show verification that the leak has been taken care of, the problem has been resolved. Other activities that we talked about during the meeting, I gave an update on e-billing and auto draft. Since we started the e-billing process back in January, we have 275 clients that are on e-bill. That's about only 16% of our residents. At this point, the water company is only saving about $50 a month with postage, printing, et cetera, things like that. Plus the time to stuff envelopes, which has either been lately here by our librarian staff, and I think we started actually volunteers last week again. Note that everything that comes in the mail, the grapevine, the calendar, flyers, are also available by links on your email. So go paperless is my recommendation there. For auto drafts, this has been going on for a lot longer. We have 40% there signed up, 672 clients on auto draft. And I've been personally using auto draft since I moved into the city 11 years ago. The biggest advantage is you got payment withdrawn on the day it's due. You don't have to worry about trying to allow time to get your payment there in time. And that avoids any late charges, so sign up for auto draft there. I will point out that the May and the June Grapevine had had articles on both e-billing as well as the auto draft. Plus there was another article on both these on Did You Know? And I didn't know this until Kat pointed it out to me. The articles were created, so there's a link in that article that you can go in there to sign up for looking at your payment history, looking at your water bills for the last 2 years. So it's all available there. Again, the links are available online when you look at the Grapevine online. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot to see who's signed up or not, but I highly recommend you sign up for e-billing and auto drafts. And in light of the COVID-19 is really the way to go for the future. Paperless, hands-off, things like that. And again, I want to thank our Assistant City Secretary for writing the articles in the Grapevine. A good job, so. I do have, I don't know if you want to have comment here, I got a couple more items to talk about. Let me continue?
Yeah.
Okay. I will answer Councilman McCall's question. You know, we do have some projects that I mentioned before, and one of the projects is to look at source and supply, to revisit the source and demand process and all that. So Commissioners Carmichael and Commissioner Haldeman are looking into that, so I think your question will be addressed by the work they're doing in conjunction with our city water manager and mayor. So I'll keep that. That is an ongoing project to look at that, to be sure that we don't set us up for any penalties if Trinity does enforce anything. So we did have one project that we discussed, and that's a subcommittee composed of Commissioner Mueller and myself, along with the city engineers and the water manager working on the water meter project. I kind of talked about it last time. presented a presentation to the commission. As I mentioned, our current water meter reading system, AMR system, is obsolete and no longer supported by its suppliers if it fails. The life expectancy is unknown. I mean, it could fail tomorrow, it could last for another 10 years, okay? We do have 40 meters that right now have to be read manually because the radio has failed to communicate. Don't get me wrong, the meters themselves are working okay. It's just the communication part to read the meter. If the system does fail, the collector does fail, it just means that we have to go out reading manually. So it takes days to read the meters instead of hours. So the meters are still collecting the data we need. If we need to upgrade, it'll be a substantial cost just to maintain what we have. So the question is, should we look at anything else? AMI system, that's what we're doing right now. So we're looking at other systems. We got some budgetary numbers. The commission did recommend to the city administrator to prepare a scope of work so we can go out for RFP, request for proposal. So that's where we stand right now, and I'll give more update later. So future meetings, we'll meet again at the end of the month on June 23rd, 6 p.m. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Starting over on the left side, questions, comments for our water
Yes,
commission?
I'm glad, Mr. Valdez, that your contract requires that you stay with us 8 years.
You do? May I see a copy of that?
I'll create one at the current salary.
Sure, go ahead.
Irregardless of whether I understood your explanations and everything, I do appreciate you and your entire commission and the effort you put into this. Y'all are doing a really great job.
Thank you, sir.
It's got to be confusing. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, please pass on. I believe it or not, I'm very quiet in the water commission meetings. So pass on to to your commission that they are just killing it. They're putting so much work into this, so much thought into this. A few years ago, brought to the water commission here, these are some things that I think the water commission could be looking at, could be doing, and you've taken that and multiplied it tenfold. The work that you're putting expertise in engineering and analysis to, like you said, the water meters, to the system, to maintenance, to sourcing, to education for our city, it's all just long needed and is amazing work, and a lot of work. 4 hours was a long time to sit in that meeting, but you can't argue with him. It averages out 1 hour. So he tried to embarrass me and say that his meetings are shorter than ours. But
I think I have the record for the year, right?
And the last thing I'd like to thank you for is your preparation and the diligence and preparation with the leak adjustments and all that. And council, this isn't just nice talk. Think about this. After the commission was done, the chair still looked at it and said, wait a minute, there's a mistake here in this number, and corrected it. I defy any of you to ask any question about any of these things that he doesn't have the answers to. And I can tell you the water manager is right along with him. The two of them have become a team working on these things. And it's a lot of work, and the time, the energy, and the expertise is showing on this. The last thing is, thank you for making sure that they get these read-aheads. And now you're going to see how important it is to read this stuff when it gets sent to you, because it really can get pretty involved. But that's the reason why you're getting it well ahead of time. And then fire off the questions. Talk to the water manager, talk to the water commission chair, and find out what they're thinking and why they're saying what they're saying and where these numbers come from. So when you come in here, you're ready. And you're content with, you understand what's going on, because it can get pretty involved. But yeah, I can't thank you enough. I really can't.
I also want to thank Kat, our city assistant secretary, because she's the one that found the error.
Found the error. Okay.
She's the one, I run everything through her.
Well, good, it's her job.
she's my editor, so I go through everything, so she'll be sure she catches everything, so everything that sends out is okay. So anyway, I thank her
Thank you.
for catching the error, so.
Thank you very much. Anything else for Water Commission? Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Moving on to item 8D, wildlife management. I got a couple of things to tell you about with wildlife management. Our acting chair, Mr. David Krasinski, could not be here. I've talked to him on the telephone and communicated with him today as well. He can't be here, but in your package, you see that you have a resignation of the chair. The chair resigned effective immediately, and it was sent on May 28th. May 20th, excuse me. May 20th it was sent, effective immediately, and it says personal reasons. And frankly, that's all I know. I checked in with her to see if everything was okay, she needed anything, and her answer was, no, I'm good. And that's as far as it goes. So, but because it was effective immediately, we now have an acting chair who is the deputy, and that again is Mr. Krasinski. I talked to Mr. Krasinski and I said, hey, I know that the process is for y'all to first accept the resignation, recommend the resignation acceptance, bring it to council, council then accepts it, and then now you go back to your commission and now work on who's going to be the chair, the new chair and the new vice chair, or if that's the way it works out. And I said, in this case, we could short circuit it a little bit if you don't have any problem with that, and that is to just bring the resignation to council for approval, because it's pretty obvious that they're going to accept it anyway, and they're not having a meeting for a while. They haven't had a meeting. They're not going to have a meeting for a while. So he concurred, and so I'm bringing it to you to ask you to accept the resignation of the technically current Wildlife Management Advisory Commission chair, and then that'll go back to WAMAC for them to, the next time they meet, to work out who their next chair is going to be. Any questions or comments on that? Ma'am?
Would you like a motion?
Yes, I would.
Okay. With regret, I accept Ms. Segovia's resignation dated May 20th of this year.
Okay, I have place 5 with a motion to accept the resignation. Can I get a second?
Second.
Off mic, but we all.
Second.
There you go. Place 1 with the second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
I'd like to say something, Mayor.
Go right ahead.
When Cynthia first started, I was a little bit skeptical about her ability to take over the commission. During that period, she has done an incredible job. She has continued to grow. And I really have concerns about how well run it can be after she is gone. She's done an excellent job, and I want to thank her for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for saying that. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous, and I will echo that and tell you that I've said this publicly before, that she has been amazing, because if you know her history, she was very much opposed to wildlife management when she first joined the Wildlife Management Advisory Commission. And as she got into the subject, as she learned what was going on, as she learned what needed to be done, as she started talking to experts throughout the state, both people that have dealt with it in their city as well as Texas Parks and Wildlife folks, she had a complete turnaround. And she said, no, this is something we need to do. We need to do it responsibly and maintain that responsibility and that transparency. And it was really neat to see that happen.
And that was the growth I was talking about.
And her ability to maintain an open mind and to consider facts was remarkable, and something that we all can take a page from. So yes.
If I may also too, she really stepped in and became a huge help to the Parks Commission. She was responsible for the wildlife meadow and so on and so forth. That she just really, and she went to bat for getting donations for us for the egg extravaganza, which will be held in September. But she was quite an asset. She worked. She was really. She's not gone. I just mean she has been a delight to work with.
Yes, thank you. And then item D2, there's no other report from Wildlife Management. So moving on to item 8, E, Parks Committee. We have Mr. Chamberlain representing the Parks Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for the opportunity. Due to COVID-19, the Parks Committee has not had a meeting since February. However, next Wednesday, we will be holding a meeting at Paul Davis Park. So we're good to get back in and get the whole team together again. During the last few months, the Parks leadership team, Dr. Jim Miller, Linda Potts, and myself, we've been meeting with via conference calls or face-to-face at the various parks, and we continue to support the parks during this unique period of time. We also have been safely interacting with Public Works, which has been doing an outstanding job of keeping the parks maintained and also keeping them safe for the community. We appreciate everything that Public Works the team has done. All of this also was done in adherence with the public health safety guidelines that the council had set forth before from that area. And our principal focus has been towards our flagship park, which is Paul Davis Park. And since February, we've been working on cleaning and clearing away and removing the debris from the annual cleanup that we did with the help of the Lions Club and other community members. We continue to develop the trail in Paul Davis Park, and we are in the installation stage of installing 2 new water fountains at the park. One will be by the baseball backstop, and the other one will be over by Pavilion 3. Hopefully that'll be in the next 30 days. Pending contract approval for removing trees that are a safety hazard around the playground area. There's 8 of them that have been identified and flagged, 4 that Public Works will handle and 4 that a third-party contractor will handle. We have created a living park inventory of the facilities and equipment at each of the parks. We have completed an inventory of 3 of the parks that we have at this time. Talked about the wildflower medal with Cindy and everything else, done a fantastic job there, and I echo the accolades from the council on her support and everything that she's done. If you get a chance, please stop by and see the wildflower meadows. They're really in bloom, looks beautiful at this time. We are going to continue to enhance the meadows as we go forward. We also have introduced a new rock garden, which is just beyond the meadow area. John, you actually had a chance to see us the other day when we were out there talking about it. Upgrading 2 dog waste solutions or stations, one at Park Lane and one at Paul Davis Park. Those should be installed as well this month. And the baseball diamond, we started clearing away the infield area from that side. We've also been in communication with the mayor after he did a comprehensive walkthrough with Public Works. The good news is that he rattled off his punch list, and we hit everything but one on our task list that we'd already had on the list. So, but we do appreciate you going through and identifying a lot of things that we've seen as well, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that I'd like to bring up at this time is the Texas Park and Wildlife Commission grant. I'd like to officially recognize and thank Lisa Swint for her hard work in making it possible for the Parks Committee to be considered as a candidate for a grant. And they just recently, the Texas Park and Wildlife went ahead and awarded $3.7 million on 22 different trail-related projects throughout the state of Texas. What her hard work has done is put us in a position to go forward for next year to see about submitting a grant request, if that's what we decide to do. So Lisa has laid the foundation down for us to be able to go forward with that. Much appreciated. We are looking to update ordinance number 24. This is the use of the parks, recreational areas, and facilities controlled by the city. Why? Because we're getting Pavilion 3 ready for rental. We have to do some landscape for safety reasons and appearance, also add another picnic table. And during that same time, we'll look to review and rewrite the ordinance, looking also at the pricing structure for the facilities that are there. Then we'll come back to the council for review and approval on that point. Next year's budget, we've already started the process on that. We'll reach out to Public Works, City Administrator, and City Finance to go ahead and get their input and reviews, so we'll have that ready in a timely manner to come into play. Karen Ford has been very gracious for her time in getting us up to speed and understand the process and procedures. The Parks Committee and Public Works, we've been working on a task list. to go ahead and coordinate what needs to be done, what are open items and the priorities of them. I will tell you, year to date, 105 tasks have been created. 81 or 77% of them are in open status. 14 or 13% are in closed status, and 10 are set up for a future schedule, such as something for the Christmas tree laying event. There's something that we want to do, but we just have it in the scheduled status at this point to come into play. And there are two open items that I would like to bring to the council's attention at this point. And the first one is the mayor went ahead and reached out to the Parks Committee and asked if we had a written process or procedure for naming or renaming the parks and possibly a facility at a park. And my answer was no, we don't have that. He asked if we would look into it, and I said yes, we would be more than happy to do that. So we're in the process of expanding our Parks Committee manual, if you would, to put in a process and procedure around that. We'll work on it. We'll come back to the committee with it from that side. I'm figuring probably 60 days max. We'll be able to get some back to you. We want to share with our general committee membership on next week to talk about that. And the next thing is with regards to the 4th of July. The Parks Committee normally spearheads the 4th of July event, and this year Dave Heyer and myself are point for the 4th. And as Dave and I have reviewed prior successes with the 4th of July in the city, we came across an idea which we thought we would like to at least present to the council and get your input, and that was, the idea was to add a grand marshal to the 4th of July parade. It's our way of basically recognizing someone who has done a stellar job for the community and that is either given to the community itself or to the state or to the nation for that matter, depending upon who comes into our neighborhood from that point. But we'd like to think about introducing a grand marshal, and the idea is the park committee is working on writing up a document for selection criteria in the process to nominate a grand marshal. And I think, Mayor, you want me to turn it back to you?
Yeah, thank you. So I want to talk to you, council, about the grand marshal thing. And actually, I'm going to even go back further because I want to illustrate when I talk about the grand marshal that it's also about something else. And you heard Mr. Chamberlain talk about naming facilities. And so my question to him was, do we have a process, a procedure for people to nominate a name, then for the Parks Committee to consider it, and then to come up with a recommendation, because ultimately it's y'all that make a decision on if something's going to be named and what it's going to be, who it's going to be named after. But my feeling is, instead of just every once in a while coming to you and saying, hey, we thought it'd be great if we named this park after this person, that they actually had a process that you all could have some confidence that when they come to you, they've thought about it and it's been through a little bit of vetting before it comes to you. So that's what he's talking about with that. So that said, also want to do the same thing with the Grand Marshal. The Grand Marshal idea is, I think, I'm going to endorse it now and tell you it's a great idea. We get to acknowledge somebody in public, thank them for their service to the community. It's all good and doesn't cost us anything, really. So it's all good, and I don't see any bad unless y'all do. The same idea as what I just told you about facilities would go with the marshal, where they would be working on this well ahead of the parade and come to you a month or two prior with a recommendation that you could then consider and then go forward. The issue with this one is the next time you get together is a couple of days prior to the parade, assuming we're going to have a parade, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so that said, this process for the very first time we do it would be a little bit short-circuited. They wouldn't necessarily have all the process in place. That said, also, they do have somebody in mind that they would like to have as a grand marshal. I told the Parks Committee it was your decision. And so I asked him to then not only deliver the idea of the Grand Marshal, which I'm going to ask now, just by consensus, do you all agree that a Grand Marshal is an idea you'd like to go forward with? Consensus? No? What about?
Question, are you proposing this person be a resident or someone?
The vision is it's a resident that's contributed. But again, as we go forward beyond the first year, they will bring to you a process and criterion that you all can decide whether or not you agree with, or you want changed, or anything else. Because again, ultimately, it's your decision. So hang on a second. Does that answer?
Sorry.
Excuse me, it answers that question. But on the park naming as well, if I may go back, Mr. Trial and I had talked about that actually probably two years ago or so on the concept, and so, but granted, we haven't done anything formal, but I certainly support the idea. We talked about naming individual pavilions.
Yes.
Maybe the Wildflower Meadow and so on and so on.
Absolutely. Yes. Sir?
You're suggesting that the Parks Committee designate and appoint or whatever the Grand Marshal?
No. Suggesting they recommend it to you, and you,
Okay.
as a body, the
All right.
council, make the decision.
And for what purpose? We've gone all these years without a Grand Marshal on our 4th of July parade. Why would we?
Because it's a
Why would
public-
we need to have one?
Because having a Grand Marshal in a parade is not uncommon, and being able to recognize some people that have made significant contributions to our community by having them in a lead car, waving to people as they go through the parade, is something that the Parks Committee thinks is a good idea, and I do too. That's why. So, I mean, and frankly, to say that we haven't done it before, so we shouldn't do it, well, you know the rest of what I'm going to say there, so.
We've gotten by all these years without it, so I just don't have the enthusiasm maybe you do.
Sure,
Okay?
understand. So I do have two people that think it's a good idea, so I still have consensus. So that said, the council has consensus that it's a good idea. So now if you would like to tell the council who y'all have in mind for this year, and then the council will have the opportunity to say whether or not they agree with that.
Would like to recommend retired Brigadier General Charles Chuck Ely as the Grand Marshal. He's 34-year military veteran, honorable military veteran, and a 44-plus year resident in the city of Garden Ridge, and has been a supporter of this community for years.
And again, next time they do this, there'll be a lot more, you'll get something in writing and all that. I know at least one person up here knows General Elia pretty well. His name is on the front door, by the way. If you walk outside right now and look to the right, you'll see his name. His name is up at the community center. His family has supported the community through blood, sweat, tears, and money for a lot longer than I've lived here. By the way, this was brought to me. This wasn't my idea, but I still think it's a good start. So do you have anything else to say about that before I ask the council?
No, just like their support. We think it is something new, but it's also kind of bringing the city of Garden Ridge up to another level as far as our parades and what we do and everything else from that area. And it's a special way to recognize someone in our community who has contributed to the community and made it grow.
Fair enough. Starting over on the right side, any questions or comments about this to Parks Committee?
I think it's a great idea. Chuck has been around and he's been active, and he's still active in the Lions Club at age 98, almost 99.
He's 99 next month.
Yeah, he's older than I am.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, contextually, this is a guy that still goes to the camp with us and paints.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he still is very involved. Anything over on this side? Questions or comments? So, council, you've heard that, and if you would like to give me a motion, if you would like to have Brigadier General Chuck Elia as the first Grand Marshal for 4th of July parade, assuming we have a 4th of July parade. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if anyone would like to move to do that.
I move to nominate Brigadier General Chuck Elia as our first, even if it's our only, Grand Marshal for this year.
Fair
Please.
enough. Place 5 with a motion to have General Chuck Elia as our Grand Marshal for the 4th of July parade this year. Can I get a second?
Second.
Place 1 with a second. Any further discussion or questions?
You made an excellent choice. Do you think he can handle the heat?
It's a very good question, and we'll work that. And obviously, in the context of COVID, he's gonna, there's a lot to this. Yes, and we've already talked about that. He probably can keep him shaded, and we'll nominate you to get there with a spray bottle and spray. I don't mean to trivialize it. Your question is a very good question. Okay, any further discussion?
I can just see Brian with one of those fans.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Motion from place 5 and a second from place 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Parks, thank you very much for working this.
Thank you.
And in the future, a few months prior, they're going to come to you, but also in the coming months, they're going to come to you with what their plan is for how they'll do it moving forward, the selection, the nomination, that kind of thing. Because I think it's something, we want to make sure that that everybody knows what's going on, that it's all above board, that we're not just picking, from one category or whatever. We want it to be something where it's just people that have really done a lot for the community, contributed to the Garden Ridge that we live in and know and love. Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Next is Volunteer Garden Ridge. I'll just tell you that we are, I'm not even going to put Dr. Miller on the spot. It's alive and well, but it's also under COVID. Now, that said, we still had nearly 100 hours of volunteer time, and the poster, I don't want to say poster children, that's probably, the poster people for volunteering in our community right now under COVID is at our library. If you haven't been to our library, we now have volunteers back in the library. We're protecting them with shields and masks and gloves and sharp sticks and you name it, but we're making sure that they're protected, but they are there, they're volunteering and they're helping out to make sure that people can come in there and they can be engaged in the programs that the library has. So, as we move forward and we come out of this health emergency, we'll start pushing people to realize that it's time to be part of the community and start to be part of our Volunteer Garden Ridge again. Okay, moving on to item number 9. Item number 9 is approvals, authorizations. One item, it's particular about the COVID-19. And as I did last time, I want to give you kind of a rundown on where we are, state, county, and then us, just so contextually. Do it for a couple of reasons, to make sure we're all on the same page, but also knowing that this could be a source of information for some people. And so just since the last time we met is what I'm talking about. And so since the last time we met on May 18th in the state of Texas, a lot of stuff opened up. Youth clubs, child care centers, massage, personal care centers all opened up. A few days later, on the 22nd, restaurants expanded to 50%. Rodeo equestrian events, bowling alleys, bingo halls, simulcast racing, skating rinks, aquariums, natural caverns down the street was able to open up. And even bars were able to open up at 25%. The governor's words in a teleconference at one of the teleconferences since the last time that we met, he said that he emphasized that restaurants and bars are not limited by the people outside other than by being 6 feet apart. Because his words were, we don't really know what the capacity of the outdoors is. So, and I've seen that there have been some controversies around us, hadn't been a problem here, but controversies around us with people saying there's more than 25% capacity being served at a restaurant. But if they have an outdoor seating, it doesn't count against their 25%. The people just have to be 6 feet apart, and households have to be 6 feet apart. Same thing with bars. So then on the 29th, zoos opened up, and the big San Antonio Zoo is starting to transition from members to public. Youth camps, overnight youth camps, and even youth sports just a few days ago on the 31st. And certain professional sports are being allowed to open up without having in-person spectators. So the progress in the state's moving forward. Businesses with greater than 10 employees, businesses located in office buildings have to limit their occupancy to either 10 employees or 25% of their workforce, whichever is greater. And the numbers, right out of the governor's mouth, the numbers are decreasing, the curve's flattening, and a big number that's now becoming a number that everybody's paying attention to, and that is what they're calling the positivity rate. The problem is some people, if they just look at what cases are coming up and they see the cases rising, they're not looking at it in the context of a lot more testing. And so with that a lot more testing, of course, you're going to get a rise, but in positives, but the positivity rate has gone down both in the county and in the state. And so things are looking good. Phase 2 is moving along, and obviously there's other things going on, so it's kind of dropped out of the news a little bit, but we're still moving in the right direction. As far as the county, all executive orders from the county have expired with the exception of the local disaster declaration. Actually, before I go any further, anybody have any questions or anything that I didn't mention you think is pertinent, Council, to what's going on in the state, from the state perspective, from the governor and the governor's office perspective? Anything? Okay. Then from the county perspective, executive orders have expired except for the local disaster declaration. They're supporting everything that in the Texas, the state of Texas emergency orders. And so you have the essay on this. Drive-up testing 2 weeks ago was paused. So if somebody said, hey, I tried to do some drive-up testing and there was none, there actually was no drive-up testing in our county 2 weeks ago. And the reason why is that the governor had mandated that all nursing homes were tested, 100%. Everybody in them and everybody that worked at them had to be tested. And because that was a significant drain on the testing system of both testing and staff, everything shifted to that. So that went well. In our county, 1,465 people were tested. And at the last time I got a report, there were some pending still, but there was only one positive. And the interesting thing is the positive was a healthcare worker, it wasn't a resident. The other thing about that is I laughed because immediately I'm on the phone going, well, what about the Garden Ridge facility and what about Sedalis? And I was schooled on those aren't nursing homes. So probably some of you, I'm guessing Brian knows because he's probably getting ready to go. But there's a big difference between assisted living and memory care and all that, and having an actual nursing home. And neither one of those are nursing homes, and that's why neither one of them were tested. However, the governor has intimated that may be something they're going to go to next, to start to look at some of the other things, the assisted living facilities and memory care facilities and that kind of thing. But that word hasn't gotten out yet. But everybody's waiting for it. But that said, the county believes that now they're smart enough and have enough, and I shouldn't say smart enough, experienced enough that they believe they can maintain the drive-up testing and do some of those other facilities as well. But it was a big deal because the governor told everybody, you got a week to do this. You're going to do this, and you're going to make this happen, because he saw that throughout the country, the hot spots were nursing homes, and he wanted to, and he has said this in many of his statements, is that as we open up Texas, we need to ensure that we're protecting the at-risk population. And very clearly in some states, the at-risk population has not been protected, and the nursing homes, and actually I shouldn't even say in some states, even in some counties in Texas, the nursing homes have been hit very, very hard. So that's why he said enough is enough, we need to make sure we do this. But again, even in the county, the numbers, the positivity numbers are decreasing. You see there's the PIO puts out the reports, you see a couple more, and if you're not thinking in the context of more and more testing is happening, you're thinking, oh gosh, we're getting a lot more people that are coming up positive. But the fact is the positivity number is actually decreasing. Also, the county, I'm on the call with the mayors and the judge still, and the county's reporting that PPE, and you heard from the chief, PPE pretty healthy now. They've got a good stock in it, and that's why when we've asked the emergency manager to get us some more, he's been able to indulge us. So we're a lot better off with that right now. So that's in the county. Any questions, comments, or things that you all know that's going on in the county that I didn't mention?
A lot of your other homes, your assisted living, have been shut down for months.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law is 92, and my wife, Carmen, who's an RN, and her sister, who's an RN, have not even been able to get into the facility to see their mother. So they're pretty stringent on that, even though it's not a nursing home.
That's right. Agree. Any other comments or questions on the county? So now in our city, ordinance 227 that you approved, public health emergency declaration, is still in force, and it will be in force, as you recall, until the state says that the emergency declaration, public health declaration is rescinded. And we've only done that one amendment, the RV amendment that I issued. Our library, as you heard, is open at 50% now. Books on the Go is still in effect, but get on into the library, tell people to go to the library. You heard that our city hall is open 9 to 12, and tell people about that, because one thing that's being misperceived is somebody comes up here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and the door's locked and they're not reading all the fine print on their signs, and they think their government isn't here for them. And nothing could be further from the truth. From 9 to 12, it's still walk-in, and we're practicing the social distancing and all the practices up there. But if you can't be here after 9 o'clock and you want to be here at 8 o'clock, or between 8 and 9, or you want to be here after 12, all you have to do is call and make an appointment. Garden Ridge City government is available to citizens here, and they need to know that, so please spread the word on that. We are working a little bit of limited contractor engagement. If you notice, we even had a contractor come in and put up the blinds. They're not done. They better not be done, but they're not done. The parks, you heard about the parks equipment opening back up, and Public Works keeping them clean. The restrooms in the parks are open up also, and they're working hard on that. Tell you also that there are groups that routinely rent the Bluebonnet Room, and on a very temporary basis, we're moving those people into the Wildflower Room of the community center, so they can spread out and keep a social distance when they're having their HOA meeting or whatever kind of meeting they would normally have in the Bluebonnet Room. That's not to say that when all this settles down that they're going to keep getting the Wildflower Room. They won't. They'll go back to the Bluebonnet Room. But for right now, in the interest of enabling them to have the space to social distance, we're doing that. Speaking of the Community Event Center, starting in July, we'll start to open up bookings again for the Community Event Center. They'll have to, they'll still be responsible to maintain, CDC recommendations. As a public entity, we can't require masks in our facilities, but we can strongly recommend it, and we have been doing that. The other thing is, after July 4th, the pavilions in the park will be back available to be rented. So we starting in July, in essence, we will be renting out those things again. And then finally, again, our city, we are encouraging CDC safe practices, distancing, household groups, masks, and all the things that has been going on. But none of that is mandatory. It's all recommended. So that said, that's what's going on from the state, the county, and the city perspective. But I do want to end it with a discussion about the 4th of July. There are a lot of questions on, are we going to have a 4th of July celebration, and to what extent? What I've been telling the organizations that are involved with it, the Parks Committee, the GRCPAA in particular, Boy Scouts, everybody that's involved, and we've had discussions with the staff, including this morning, is that anything that we can do to plan that we can turn off, let's do that. So we can look for volunteers, we can plan for the events, but anything that we do that is a one-way door, that we can't take back or reverse if we're not going to do that particular event, we need to not do it. Now, most of those things, the things that are kind of irreversible, really don't happen for a couple weeks still. buying the food and things like that clearly don't happen a month ahead of time. The reason to do that is because I've been, and we, the staff, have been wanting to see how things develop in the state, what the governor's saying, what's the next step, how public health is saying things are going. The reality is now, with other things going on in cities and in the state, there's not as much attention put on COVID. So I'm not, to be realistic, I'm not sure a lot is going to change in the next few weeks. But what I've told the Parks Committee and what I've told the other organizations is give it till the middle of June, so a few more weeks, because about that time is where we need to fish or cut bait. That said, we've seen parades a month ago, so there's no reason why we can't have a 4th of July parade. We can have a 4th of July parade that is still abiding by CDC guidelines. We can ask people to gather only in household groups on the side of the road, not to get all clumped up. We can do the same thing with any of the participation in the parade itself. And we might be surprised how many people come out because they're tired of not being out and the opportunity to do that. So, because I guess I should start this with saying that I feel pretty strongly that anything we can do to still be kind of normal and come together as a community and celebrate the independence of our nation, particularly with all that's going on, it's a very positive thing for us to remember where we are, what we have, and I don't want to stand up and start singing here, but you get what I'm talking about, and I think it's important. And so anything that we can do, I think it would be a terrible mistake for us to go, COVID, 4th of July, you all stay home and enjoy the day. I think we need to figure out what we can do based on the situation in the next few weeks to commemorate, to celebrate, and to come together, even if it's 6 feet apart, for the 4th of July. I've talked to the Parks Committee, I've talked to staff that probably not going to have a big water slide this year, and may not have some of that stuff, and I don't know, the jury's out on some of the other things we do, but I think we could have a parade and possibly even have a loose, gathering to be able to raise a flag and to sing the national anthem and a couple of songs, something like that. So that's where we're going with this. I wanted you to know our mindset from the perspective of the organizations that are involved in this, the staff and myself, but then I wanted to open it up to y'all to see if you think we're way off here or if you're good with the direction we're going. And I'll start with the left side.
I think as far as Parks Committee, we'll learn a lot more. We'll get quite a bit more input from the committee next week. I think the parade idea is a good idea. Again, it will be hard to social distance on the float. We might just put council people hanging off every corner, something like that. Mr. Lancey will be in the middle fanning everyone. I agree, things like the super slide and the water features and all that. I mean, if we can figure out a way to have the traditional hot dogs and hamburgers or something, that'd be great. I think that's probably all we need. I don't really think, I don't know that our watermelon wheel is worth setting up. It was very successful last year, but that's the type of thing I think that our committee, that our committee can determine next week. You say we've got a couple weeks. No, we really don't. It's a month from tomorrow. So we won't even have our meeting until, again, next week, so.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am? Sir?
I've got to move forward with exactly what she said, the parade, what little functions we can have there, flag racing, hot dogs, hamburgers, beer, sodas, and if we have to, do away with some of the extras. But go ahead and move forward with the whole thing.
Great. Thank you. Sir?
I agree. Let's go for it.
Okay. So, yeah, Parks will be talking, but we'll see if anything else develops or if we're, and my attitude has been, even if it was a month ago, we still could have had a parade. So I really appreciate your comments and your endorsement of this. As you can tell, it's important to to the city, to the community, for us to not hide in our houses on 4th of July, you know. That's right, that's right. He wasn't on mic, but what he said was, we're not going to let this shut us down, and we haven't. We've been prudent, we protected citizens, we protected our staff, but we also need to remember where we live and why we live the way we live, so.
If I may, sir, we might want to think long and hard about how we publicize this,
Absolutely.
because I don't want.
Weighs heavy on my mind, yes.
Yeah, we don't want people, I mean, we were very successful and people are very happy with our free games and free food, and I don't think we need to encourage that.
Yeah.
So I think that we really need to watch how we publicize it this year.
We got our work cut out for us, but we can do it. Good, thank you. So on item 9, you got number 1, community blood drive sponsored by the City of Garden Ridge, the Garden Ridge Lions. It's going to be on the 13th of June, 9 to 3 at the Garden Ridge Community Event Center. It is coincident with the shred day that we're going to be having. So we've spent a lot of time talking, staff's talking about, you know, as people coming in for one or the other and making sure that we got this straight. The information for the blood drive is up here. You make an appointment, basically. The South Texas Blood and Tissue Center, they're the ones that the experts on this, and they've been doing this for a long time, and they've been doing it since COVID too. So they're kind of leading it. But then the city and the Lions, and the Lions are the ones that came up with this and approached the Blood and Tissue Center to put this together. Great thing. You see here as a thank you, HEB gift card or your choice of some of these other cards. Then where's the thing about the drawing? Is it on here? Yeah, you have to reduce it a little bit. Jordan Ford, supporting San Antonio. You get entered in a lease, a 2-year prepaid lease to drive around a 2020 Ford Mustang. And you donate between May 21st and June 30th. So there's a lot of things involved in this, but the Lions will be out there, staff will be out there, and we're going to come together and donate some blood. And again, that's up here, June 13th, also the day of the shred. Any questions or comments on this? Starting over here. Okay. Next is leave it up for if you all have anything else. Questions, comments, desires, and or it's open on our agenda if you desire any action regarding any of the activities. You've heard from every staff position what the city and what we're doing. You got my synopsis of what's happening. So if there's any will of the council to do anything, change anything, to move anything forward regarding COVID, it is appropriate at this time because that's where we have the action for the agenda. So anything at all that you want us to address? Sir, anything? Ma'am, anything? Okay, great. Next up is item number 10. Item number 10, going to turn it over to City Administrator.
Well, our shred event that was scheduled for a couple of months back has been rescheduled for Saturday, June the 13th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The sponsor, Suzanne Kuntz Real Estate Team, is sponsoring the event for the city. Residents only. We will have staff. We will have PPE. We will be donating and modeling our PPE that day.
Yes.
But anyway, bring your documents for shredding. No binders and no binder clips are allowed.
And again, it's the same day as the blood drive.
Yes.
So what we're saying is we're thinking that maybe you can't shred anything until you donate blood. Although you have to do I'm sorry, I can't take questions, but please, afterwards, we'll talk as much as you'd like.
One thing I forgot to add, the blood drive will be occurring here in the City Hall parking lot. I'm not the blood drive, I'm sorry.
The shred. The shred.
The shred.
And the blood drive is in the community event center.
Community center.
And the blood drive is by appointments only, so there won't be a lot of people here. at one time.
Yeah, and that's their,
Right.
they manage it. They're very precise about managing it, to make sure that people can separate, and they're not creating a problem, they're fixing a problem. Okay.
And that's all I have.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. Okay. No, I know I don't. Okay. The next item is Public Works Director Stephen Steinmetz is going to provide council with an update on Oak Wilt.
Thank you. Mr. Edmondson with the Forestry Service is going to be out Friday, and we're going to go around the park and adjacent properties to identify which route we're going to take. I did look at another tree recently. On one of the neighborhoods, their landscape crew was concerned that one of their trees was looking a little sickly. All right, let's see, where am I at? Somewhere around here, there's a tree that was not identified before. So it was a good thing we waited a while, because that's definitely going to change the course of what trench we're going to take. All the residents been notified. We might talk to them Friday, or we might schedule another day where we can all get together with them at once that are separated to keep safe, and go over what our next plan is for strategy on how we're going to tackle this.
Questions or comments for Mr. Steinmetz on the Oak Wilt? Sir? Sir? No. Ma'am? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is item 10B, Mayor's Projects, Communication Report. First, just a little idle curiosity, how we doing with the census? As of today, which actually means as of yesterday, we're at 84.9%. We are number 2 in the state of Texas. And Mountain City, we gotta disconnect our internet or something. They're number 1, and we're number 2. Out of over 20,000 cities that are recorded in the nation, we're tied. We're in a tie, like a 3-way, 4-way tie, as number 100 out of over 20,000. So our community is very involved and is paying attention. And 84.9% is a pretty good number for our census right now. So commendable. Also in the communication report, I mentioned the sign. Again, we hope that TxDOT wasn't watching our video, but mentioned the sign. But since then, Mr. Steinmetz, Mr. Lohman, and myself, we went out and took a look at where the loon's going to be and where the sign is now, and where we're going to move the sign. And so we have a plan. So that said, still, in the dark of night, if you see somebody out there with a backhoe going to knock that thing down, give us a call, because we're not going to move it just yet. The thing about it is, where we're going to move it will be a fine place to move it, and it's not very far from where it is now. But if we were to move it now, part of the earth is going to be in the line of sight. It won't be once they excavate the area to put the loon in, the turnaround, the loon. But right now, because they haven't started the construction of the loon, the site distance coming up 2252, approaching Batcave, you wouldn't see it until you were a little bit closer. We also believe that since there's going to be a light there, where we're going to put it, you'll actually be able to see it when you're sitting at the light going in the opposite direction, because typically you never read it going out of town. You only read it coming in. And now you might be able to read it both ways and still see it from Batcave, which is the easiest, most common place that people read that sign. We're still working on some other stuff with alternatives and other locations as development happens, as we investigate what we told you about with electronic signs. We're working all that in earnest. Historically, that sign has done some good. Not everybody goes that way, but we've had feedback over the years that people do see it and people do pay attention to it. Any questions on the sign, or anything you want to add to that? Keep your eyes out. See somebody touching our sign, let us know. The other one is early voting, and like Ms. Spencer to tell you about the early voting, the where, the when.
So the early voting is for is Comal County's primary runoff election, which is on July 14th. You'll see on the screen that we are a polling place. However, it's going to be in the Blue Bonnet Room in the Community and Event Center during the whole time of early voting. So none of it will take place in here. We are communicating that through an article in the Grapevine with the hours for each date because as you can see, they differ a little bit throughout the 2-week period. We're also communicating that in the monthly calendar. It's posted electronically on the city's website calendar. We'll have signs on the City Hall doors directing voters to the Blue Bonnet Room, although they'll probably still walk into City Hall, but we try our best. We'll have some reminders posted on social media once we get closer, and then of course our reminders on the city sign next to our yellow sticky. That's all I have.
And if you're keeping track of yellow sticky, says, please don't tear this sign down, call us first. Yeah, so I've had a couple of questions about this already, and somebody said, well, wait a minute, the Blue Bonnet Room, how are you going to maintain social distancing in the Blue Bonnet Room? Well, you're going to maintain social distancing because you're going to be outside of the Blue Bonnet Room waiting until they tell you can come in to maintain the distancing. And then they said, well, where's the line going to be? Outside. And I said, what line? So, early voting, lots of time of early voting. So please get on up there, spread the word, get people up there, and we'll, like you heard Ms. Spencer say, we're going to put out lots of reminders on that. So that's communicating. Make sure we're getting communication out there. Item 10B2, contact report. I got a couple of things to tell you. One of them is there was a social media post about some mail being stolen, a package being stolen from somebody's front area. And they had it on video, and they actually posted the video. I don't know if any of you all saw it. The two things that really struck a chord with, first me, and then also with the chief and with city administrator, is that they said that they had reported it, and we had no record of it being reported. I'm kind of sensitive about that because I have a lot of pride in our city and in our response, be it through Public Works, Water, or the police force. And when somebody says something needs to be done, we're gonna find out and we're gonna respond. And for them to say that they reported it when they hadn't was a difficult pill to swallow. That was only the beginning. The other part is when I actually looked at the video on my larger screen in my office, I realized that it really, to me, looked like it was a food container. You know, when you get a to-go and it's in the styrofoam, and then they put it in a white bag, so when you pick up, the bag kind of stretches. That's exactly what it looked like. So Chief and I talked about it, and the chief took this and ran with it. I'm going to give you the preview of it. I want him to tell you, but the bottom line here is the end result was not only did we determine what it was, not only did we correct this, and was it corrected on social media, but he got some neighbors to talk to each other, which was really cool too. So Chief, could you tell everybody how this went?
So as you said, sir, we saw the video, and once I got back to the office on Monday, I couldn't find any documentation for anything being reported. So curiosity got the better of me. I told the mayor I wasn't going to get involved initially until something was done, but it was eating me up. So I spoke to these individuals before in our community, and so I stopped by the house and happened to catch them at the house and started asking some questions. And it sounded a little odd at first because one of the residents had just come home and saw a van pull up in the driveway and knew they were making a delivery of what they thought was mail. And she went in the house, and when she came back out, nothing was there. And then checked the video and saw this individual had walked off with this package. So they initially did call to report, but they were heading out of town, so they didn't make that initial report. That's why we never got it in the police department, because they weren't home for us to go contact. So no officer was sent by dispatch at the time. So I got there before they actually had called back to report it, and talked to them a little bit and tried to feel out what was going on. And so I said, I let them know. I said, I'm just going to go talk to the neighbor and find out. So I went next door to some new residents over there who actually, once he came out, I said, I realize this is an odd question after I introduced myself. I said, did y'all order some food last Friday, somewhere around there? And then he came up and said, yes, actually, my son had ordered some food last Friday afternoon, and they delivered it to the house next door. And I said, oh, so he went and got it. He said, yeah, we told him to let him know next door that he was taking this. I said, okay. And then the other resident there was the brother. He said, yeah, I told him that too. So they will be giving this young man probably another lecture and ribbing on him for quite a while within the family. But it was great because then I was able to go back and talk to the original folks and explain to them. And I guess after I left, then they all got together and introduced each other and made sure everybody knew each other and had a good laugh about it. And so I did ask her to go ahead and follow up on social media, because one of the things I had talked to him about was explaining that a lot of mail theft postings get put on social media that turn out not to be, but they never get corrected. So people think there's a bigger theft issue out here than what we have. We only have, as far as we have reports on, is one active mail theft case in the last several months. So I wanted to make sure that the residents were informed that this wasn't going on. So she did a very outstanding, very good job of posting on there that we had taken care of everything and how it all worked out and how she met her neighbors, which I really appreciated that even more. So that helps eliminate some of the confusion out in the community.
So comments, questions for the chief on that one?
I just glad he brought that last part up, because my wife did say that she got on there or he or she got on there and explained everything and made everything right. So I want to thank her for that.
Yeah, so publicly, chief, thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
Next one is a little bit different ilk, but I want to address it because you all got this email. And this email was from a resident who alleged that that property that was theirs was being kept from them. And I assume everybody knows what I'm talking about. You did get the email. It was a rather lengthy email detailing from this person's perspective that this property was being kept from them, that they believe that this was not appropriate, and that the police department was acting inappropriately. We sat down, we reviewed all the actions, we reviewed what had been said, what had been done, and then I called the individual. You all know me well enough to know that there's no way that I would tolerate, which wouldn't happen, I will say that also, the police department would never infringe on somebody's rights as the way this person alleges. But it was a big deal to me personally, because I feel pretty strongly about those rights. And so I called him to explain to him what happened and why, when he was asked to identify the property, he could not. He alleges that he wasn't asked, which, I'm not even going to get into that. It doesn't make any sense to me that he wouldn't have been asked by our detective, by our officers and then our detective. But so the problem became, since he couldn't identify it other than to say in general terms what it was, this item then needed to be, the department needed to do their due diligence to ensure that it wasn't a stolen or reported stolen firearm. And to do that, they have to go through the ATF. So they pinged the ATF. The problem with that was that the ATF apparently is overwhelmed, and it was taking them way too long, and we called them and called them and called them, and then finally got an answer that there was some records on when it was sold out of state, but nothing here. So then it was determined, okay, it's not reported stolen. This can, it seemed reasonable to then return it to this person. But in the meantime, he wrote to all of us and wrote what he wrote. When I called him to explain that, he didn't want to hear it. When I called him to explain it, he argued with me. When I called him to explain it, he lectured me. So I decided that there were a lot of other things I needed to do that day. So that conversation ended, and from what I understand, today he was in contact with the detective, because on top of all of that, he left town. So even when our investigator tried to return it to him, he wasn't even in town. But what I understand, he returned, and I left. It was supposed to happen around 5 o'clock. Did it happen? Okay, so it's been returned to him. And frankly, the reason I called was not because I was dying to get involved with it, but because it's a big deal to me personally that our city, our government is never accused of getting in the way of somebody's Second Amendment right. I feel very strongly about that, and it was an interesting conversation, to say the least, but it's resolved. So that's the resolution to the letter that you received. Third one, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that one? Sir? Sir. Apparently he does.
I'm sorry to hear it was resolved, because I would have suggested that you keep the item until he can prove that he had ownership of it, legal ownership. But it's all been resolved.
Well, and because I'm that kind of guy, the fact of the matter is there's no, the things that you would think there's no legal requirement for him to have a bill of sale or any of that. It would be prudent for him to at least have a record of the serial number, which he didn't have until we gave him the serial number. But, so that, be that as it may, it's resolved, and he has his firearm back, and that's the end of that. Anything else, sir? Ma'am? Okay. So to end on a good note, let me tell you about another one that started out kind of awkward, but ended up being a very good one. And you didn't get this note, but a note was written to me by a citizen that said, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned because I saw somebody, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest, saw somebody walking around with a bag, taking things out of mailboxes, and we're very sensitive about mail right now. And I tried to communicate to the city, the Garden Ridge Police, and they wouldn't talk to me. And when I talked to dispatch, they said that because it had been an hour since it happened, they weren't able to do much about it, but they would report it. And when there was time, that there would be an officer came by. In the meantime, he also came up to City Hall to talk to the police. He ended up talking to a Public Works person in the parking lot who, with all due respect to our Public Works employee that's talking to him, he's kind of a deer in the headlights going, hey, I'm sorry, let me see if there's somebody there that can talk to you. And the answer was given, what you have all heard before, that you need to call dispatch. So he was frustrated about it. So what I did was I called him after I listened to his phone call with dispatch, which turned out that it wasn't, he didn't see it, his wife had seen it, and his wife made the decision to not make a phone call, and then when he got home, it was already a considerable time after she had seen it. So now there's building in all this delay. And his first statement to me was, I need to apologize for that note. I was just pretty irritated at the time. And he was very nice and very respectful. And it was a 180 out from the other phone call I told you about. But I took the opportunity to explain to him the procedure and why a Public Works person can't dispatch the police, that it has to be a licensed, trained communicator per TCOL guidance to be able to do that. And we all know that. We've talked about that before. But moreover, I emphasize to him, and I want to emphasize to anybody watching this, but particularly to y'all, to please tell your friends, neighbors, and constituents that if you see something that you think is a crime, call 911. The reason why that communicator is licensed and trained is to make the decisions on the priorities. So assuming you're not calling because you don't have pepperoni on your pizza, call because that person can then say, okay, that's a big deal, but this robbery in progress is probably a bigger deal, so I'm gonna send the officer to that instead. And that licensed dispatcher communicator can also run background and do a lot of the other things that not even our police clerk can do. So it's important to impress upon people that we sincerely appreciate their judicious use of 911, but if they see a crime, call 911 and let the dispatcher do the decision-making on what the priority is, right? And if it's not, if they don't deem it's an emergency, a crime isn't in progress, they're reporting something that happened hours or days ago, dispatch, calling dispatch is definitely the way to go. And all those numbers obviously are available to everybody. But so I explained that to him, and he said, I didn't know that. And then he also had the perception that, you know, we used to be able to do it, and now with the new administration and the new chief and all this, and I said, whoa, time out. This has nothing to do with any individual. It's not personality-driven. It's TCOL-driven, and it's the rules. It's the way we operate. And I said, the bottom line for this discussion is that he said, you know, I didn't understand that, and I understand what you're saying, and we should have just called 911, and I'll impress upon that to my family as well, and anybody that I come in contact with. And he was very apologetic about, quote, wasting my time, and I said, you are not wasting my time at all. This is important for us to get this message out. So the bottom line is this citizen hopefully now is kind of an ambassador for our system and the way we operate with this, and he was a pleasure to talk to, frankly. So that was the last that we have in citizen contact reporting. Comments or questions on this one, sir?
Was there any mail stolen?
No. Oh, yeah, the other shoe dropping on this is it was exactly the opposite. It was somebody that was putting things in the mailbox, which is a crime, and the person was identified and was corrected. So yeah, it was what it was. Is she was walking around with a bag of flyers, and she was the bag. She wasn't taking things out; she was putting things in. Yeah, yeah, and our police department handled it. So yeah, but not because of this person calling it. They knew about it ahead of time. Yeah, good question. Anything?
Okay, just to just really unnerve you, I came home 3 or 4 days ago, drove up to my driveway, and I noticed the mail carrier, the regular mail carrier, I recognize him by himself personally, as well as his vehicle. He was backing up the hill to my mailbox. And he went in and pulled my mail out and looked at it. And I pulled up beside him and I said, is there a problem? He said, no. He said, a lot of people didn't get mail today. I'm just making sure I put yours in the right place.
Well, to his credit, you know, he didn't just blow it off and go home.
So,
You know?
just saying. Just saying.
I understand. Yeah. Anything else on that? All right, so that's some citizen contact that we've had over the last week, and you can tell that the police department has been very involved in a lot of this stuff lately, but to always a really reasonable conclusion, and I appreciate all that the chief and his officers and supervisors are doing to keep us moving in the right direction. Thanks, Chief. Okay, that concludes item number 10. Item number 11 is discussion of future agenda items, starting on the right side. Anything you want on the next agenda? Sir, ma'am.
Do we have a hazardous waste date established yet? That would be my question for the agenda. I thought it might come up in Ms. Kane's report.
Yeah, we don't have an update, so we took it off, but it's a very good question. We are working it still.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of that is the coordination with the county, which they're not really interested in coordinating a whole heck of a lot right now for obvious reasons, so. But yes, the minute we get an update, it's going back on the agenda. We talk about it at least a couple times a week still, so. Or at least I ask the question at least a couple times a week, which much to her chagrin. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Next up is item number 12, citizen comment period. So anybody here would like to come up and speak, it's 2 minutes. You don't have to have signed up ahead of time. And as long as Mr. Kniper doesn't talk about the school, we're good. And that's only because you can't talk about the same thing twice. 2 minutes, state your name and address. That doesn't count towards the time. When you're done, if you would go over to the table that Ms. Spencer is about to walk away from and put your information on there so we can keep track of who's been speaking. But that said, anybody who wants to come up, come on up.
Rod Chamberlain, 8807 Cherokee Path, Garden Ridge. This is to actually recognize Dwayne with the Water Department. About 2 weeks ago, he had stopped by looking at the meter and checking out, so I went outside and said, hey, what's going on? Can I help you? And he said he was checking on the meter of the next door neighbor who had just moved in. Because they had noticed on a previous month's water bill, the usage was very low, and now it was all of a sudden high. And of course, he did not know that it had been vacant for a month. So to that point, you're checking proactively what's going on out there, and I think that need to be commended for doing that. So job well done.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Ken Kniper, 8891 Shanetal Road. Maybe if you could put something on the city sign that the does are dropping their fawns. There's some small ones around, and to warn citizens to stay away, not to mess with them, because mamas will leave their fawns in one spot, come back and pick them up later in the day, and they will stay pretty close in one area. But they are also very protective of their fawns, and they will fight either animals, dogs, or humans if they get too close, and they're close. So please do not touch the fawns, do not move them. The mothers will come back and get them, and that way you will not get attacked, or your animals, like a dog, will not get attacked if they get too close to the fawn. And not only that fawn, that doe, but other does around, the mamas will protect their babies. So maybe you could put something on the city signs that the deer are having fawns right at this time, and to please keep clear of them and leave them alone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Pam Fritz from Garden Ridge Drive. I don't think I heard the whole thing, so just tell me, was it unanimous that we were going to have a grand marshal of the parade, or were there any dissenting votes on that? I was thinking Kay was dissenting on that, but I'm not sure if I heard correctly.
Ma'am, I'll remind you that we can't have an exchange. After the meeting, we'll be glad to talk to you. Any one of us will be glad to talk to you about anything.
Okay, well, I couldn't hear, and you can't ask questions during the meeting, so that's why I'm asking. We'll check after the meeting then. I had a question on a possible rule change out of Garden Ridge. Are we still having the same rule that people cannot build a large building? I'm not talking about storage building, but a building to be lived in, a second one on a property so that it could be rented out at some point in time by the person that owns that property. Has anything been changed on that regulation, or is that still the same?
Again, ma'am, this isn't a question and answer. This is you to make statements. And there's lots of opportunity after this meeting and any other time during any day for you to ask questions that
Okay,
we
but
will
you
be
have
glad to answer.
you have an executive meeting after this, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
But
well, we don't go to
there's a-
those, so I can't do that. On the mailbox issue, I would just like to say that if anybody has any suggestions on how we can prevent that type of thing from happening as far as the stuff from the mailboxes, they would be welcome at, any one of your meetings, because all of our mailboxes are open and we all receive checks and other things in there, and it is a big concern. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Good evening, Armando Diaz, 21010 Gunther Grove. Back in March, we had sent an email to the Water Department. We suspected we had problems with the water meter, and Jacob sent a couple of his guys out to check a couple of things, and they checked the meter for accuracy, isolated our irrigation system to ensure there wasn't an issue with that, isolated the our water softener system to make sure there wasn't a leak with that. And as it turns out, we called leak detection, and they did find a leak and repaired it. But just wanted to give props to the water guys for coming out and responding as quickly as they did. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Go sign your name, Mr. Diaz.
Do I have to have my own pen?
Anyone else? Going once? Okay, that concludes our citizen comment period. Now moving on to item 13, reports, comments from mayor and city council members. Ask you to remember to keep your comments confined to the list that's published, and it's up on the slide. Starting on the left side, anything for the list?
Nope.
Nope.
Just one thing. It was mentioned that the library is open now. I was in there today, and I just wanted to let y'all know that they got some really neat stuff in there. There was an exhibit of math books, no Legos, of math books for little kids, like 3 to 6 or 8. And for all of you with real young kids or grandkids, it would be really worth your while to go by and look at that. Shoot, I wanted to check one out myself, but I decided not to. Yes, my math level. But anyway, there are a lot of neat things at that library, and you really need to go by and look at it.
So for the record, if anybody's paying attention, we'll call that as part of City of Garden Ridge sponsored events and outreach efforts. That concludes item 13. Item 14, executive session. City Council recesses open meeting and reconvening executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551-071 and 551-0712, consultation with attorney. First one is seek legal advice in connection with deliberating purchase, lease, exchange, or value of real property regarding related negotiations for city building projects, utility projects. Number 2 is seek legal advice regarding requirements for Comal County Emergency Services and authority to contract for such services through an interlocal agreement. And number 3 is a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Government Code 551, city obligations, duties, liability regarding personnel matter related to emergency orders. Those are the 3 things we're going to cover. The first one, we're going to bring in the engineer, and the third one, we're going to bring in the chief. We're going to recess at 8:32. We're going to take 10 minutes? 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8:45. And everybody, it's reconvening in here because we can't socially distance in there. So what's going to happen is at about 8:43 or so, we're going to clear the room. We're going to cover the windows. If you want to stick around, you can socially distance anywhere from the door on. And when we're done with the executive session, you'll be invited back in if you're still here. But so 8:30. Okay, reconvening the city council meeting. Regular city council meeting on Wednesday, June 3rd at 9:36 p.m. And moving on from item 14 to item 15, business items. See if anybody has anything to recall for action from the executive session. Left side, anything? Right side, okay. Nothing there. And item 16, adjournment.
I move to adjourn at 9:36 p.m.
Place 5 with a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Place 3 with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
9:37. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.